Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Reconnect with Plant Wisdom. It's me, Tigria Gardenia. You've probably noticed just how divided things feel lately. I don't know about where you are, but definitely I'm lucky I live in community and we have all these mechanisms, but still between people, between ideas, even between us and the world we depend on, it really just feels like there is so much pressure. But one of the things that I've been exploring, and you've heard me talk about this before, if kind of, if you want to think about it, the medicine that we need in order to heal that divide, that division, isn't really trying to get your point across or more effort, but instead, what if, play with me here, it's imagination. Because contrary to what we've been taught, imagination isn't escape. This whole idea that we're just sitting in la la land. In reality, imagination is how life weaves itself back together. It's the way a forest grows and, everyone collaborating without needing permission. It is, we try different things. We imagine what it could be, and we let our imagination root back into the living system. And that is what changes. The more we dream of it, imagine it, play with it, create it in our minds, the more then we can create things in the physical world. And remember that creativity isn't just something we do. It's really how the planet thinks through us, right? We are creative expressions of things. So in today's episode, I'm joined by multi-passionate Mark Firehammer, who's an author, a musician, a creative visionary, and the founder of the Creative Humanity Alliance, who believes that imagination can rebuild our shared humanity. I love this concept so much. Together, we explore how creativity becomes connection, how art becomes activism, and how seeing ourselves as part of nature can restore both our relationship and also our resilience. So I want you to just grab yourself a hot beverage if you're living in a place that's cool, or a cool beverage if you're living in a place that's warm. Take a nice breath, give yourself some space. And I want you to really listen for the spaces between our words. Ever have any of those words that every time you try to say it, you always either say it or spell it wrong? I try to write the word planet and I always end up in plant. Or I try to write anything that has plat in it and I always end up in plant. And so what I meant to say was, I want you to really listen for the space between our words. I feel like this is one of those episodes that you hear and the enthusiasm and the excitement of what Mark is and everything Mark has to offer, but also the fact that, no name Dracena over here, if you're watching the video, is also quote unquote speaking in Key's own way, which is through movement. So this is really an episode where imagination grows wild. So with that, here's my conversation with Mark Firehammer in episode 134, Imagination Connects What's Been Divided. Welcome to Reconnect with Plant Wisdom. I'm your host, Tigria Gardenia, nature-inspired mentor, certified life coach, and the founder of the Naturally Conscious community. For over a decade, I've been known as a world ambassador for plant advocacy, working closely with plants to share their practical wisdom to help you consciously embody the elements of life that nourish your evolution. In this podcast, I delve into ancient and modern knowledge from biology to spirituality about the wondrous ways of plants. Together, we'll explore how ecosystem thinking helps you overcome limiting beliefs, understand the true nature of relationships, and live an authentic, impactful life. Hello, Mark. As we just said, I'm excited. You're excited. We're excited. I am already
full of excitement.
Exactly. There's all this excitement. I am really actually looking forward to this conversation and getting into everything that you are and do and participate in. So, but before we start, can you just share with everybody, who is Mark Firehammer?
I love that you ask it in that way because I'm going to answer it differently than almost everyone else I hear. Who I am is the name I was given. I'm Mark Firehammer. And as we talked pre-show, That name never really fit me. Even as a little kid, I'm like, I don't know. It's a cool name. Everybody comments on it, but I don't really feel like a Firehammer, which is why I chose when I released my novel to be a Kindbloom, JW Kindbloom. But you can call me Mark Firehammer.
Okay.
But who I am is not at all what I do. I feel like I'm a 63-year-old version of 4-year-old me, right? 63-year-old version of 4-year-old me. I rejected the notion as a child that you have to grow up.
Yep.
Grow up, son. You got to grow out of that. Don't be such a baby. Don't you know? That's not practical. So who I am is the guy that, as a child, said, I love who and what I am. I love that I can sit out on a snow mound in, late April, early May as a 4-year-old and wait for the tulip to come up through the snow as the first sign and have a conversation with that tulip. And I never let that go. And that's really who I am. And the way I like to put it is most of the people that I know, they're behind a veil. And that veil was put upon them by culture and civilization because there's so many expectations that are put on us. And I refuse to recognize, even acknowledge that veil.
I love that because so I'm somebody also who never really grew up.
Mhm.
I get asked even just a few days ago, I was asked by somebody as they were talking to me and I was telling them about my experiences and what I've done in the world and they just looked at me and I get this question all the time after somebody meets me for a little bit and they're like, "I'm sorry, how old are you?"
Yeah.
And then I tell them and they're like, "No, no, that doesn't make sense." Like you're that's like 10 or 15 years more than they think. And I don't
Yeah.
think because, at first you're all flattered. You're like, "Oh, it's because I look great." I mean,
Right.
besides the
My
fact
dewy
I do
skin.
take care exactly. I take care of myself. But really, it's exactly that piece, that feeling of I know I'm gonna be the, 80-year-old dressed in flamboyant clothes with a giant hat that's going down the street, like, as super bold in that aspect. And I find that that part of it is that is nature's renewal in so many
Yeah.
aspects, right? That's that part that I feel like that's that part plantness that's like constantly renewing and therefore always has a young part somewhere, right? There's always a young shoot somewhere that's there. There's always some aspect of yourself that's young and that it's get there. How do you think that that affects, like, for you personally, how do you feel that that's sort of being so in touch with that aspect of yourself, that youth inside of you, and that part of you that feels like, you know what, it doesn't really matter. I can always do what I need to do and feel that curiosity. How do you think
Yeah.
it changes the way that you approach things?
Well, you said a very key word for me is the renewal part.
Mhm.
Is that when one chooses to look at the world and their place in it, and even the universe, if you want to go that far, the idea of renewal and being connected with it all is that you are in the natural cycle of things. And like I said, when I was a little boy, I always looked forward to that first flower to come up. Like, what is the line? I wrote 4 lines of poetry when I was 7, and the first line is, "They don't ask the snow if it's okay. They don't wait for the sun to say go play. They just come up red and bold through chilly dirt that still feels cold."
Wow, that's 7?
7.
7?
And I
I
didn't
think I was
finish.
still eating much mud pies at 7. Like
I didn't finish that poem until I was 40. Right, 33 years later, I finished the poem because it had a home at that point.
Right.
So to get to the answer of your question, that is the common thread for me, is the renewal, that flower without fail every year. And as early as I can remember, I was there for it.
Mm.
Right. I was there for it. And if I didn't show up, that would have been the first moment when I let go of my own opportunity to maintain my connection, whether I'm conscious of it or not, of that renewal in that cycle. I mean, I'm 63, so I just entered my ninth seven. And so I'm all about the cycles. And if I track back my sevens, I started something new and fresh at the beginning of every seven. So does that kind of answer your question about? Yeah,
Absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely, and I'm really curious, now as I was thinking about your poem and even the 7s we're gonna get into in a minute, because that's
yeah,
a very kind of big aspect. We talked about that a lot here in Dom and Her. We even have a hall that's dedicated to that kind of it has, a series of windows. It's called the Hall of Metals in the Temples of Humankind, and, all around the walls have that evolution of humanity, but, the windows, each one of which is stained glass, like, and, different elaborate mosaics, glass mosaics, but each one dedicated to those cycles of 7. So the first 7 years, and then the second 7 years, and then going all the way around. So it's really beautiful. But I'm also curious as to how so young, being at such a young age, being able to connect to nature in that intimate way and have that understanding of renewal, of the fact of I don't have to ask permission, but instead I grow with that melting snow. So I feel that cold. It's not like I pretend it's not there.
yeah,
I know the
right.
cold is there, but the cold is also indicating to me as it starts to warm that it's time for me to take that stage, for me to step out and to start moving forward. And so that relationship between bulb and, and growth cycle, which is probably one of the best continuous, of the annuals, right? Like bulbs especially are so rich as beings that can teach us, bulb flowers in this case, because that's such a constant renewal that we see. And it's so extreme to a certain extent. It's like not, it's literally like I'm here hidden from everybody. Nobody even knows I'm here at all. And then I pop up for a period of time. Tulips in particular have no other kind of quote unquote, permit me for a second, use other than their presence. You don't eat them, you don't smell them. Like kin are there just to be seen for that season. And then poof, I'm gone. But yet there's this
I'm not
knowledge.
forgotten.
I'm not gone. Exactly. And I'm wondering how that affected you. How do you think that that influenced you, even at the beginning, obviously subconsciously, as you grew up? That being in touch with that renewal and cycle so early on.
That's a great question. And the only way that I can ever really answer it is to say that I just feel I've been around life many, many times. I've had many lifetimes.
Mm.
And I probably didn't get it right a bunch of times, right? And
Yeah.
whether you want to believe that as a worldview or not, it satisfies me because it makes sense.
Right.
Is that I didn't know because I'm special in some this lifetime way, other than what I brought with me from before.
Right.
And that doesn't make me more than or less than anybody else. It just makes me where I am on my soul's journey. Right. And it's funny that when you tell some people that, depending on their worldview, you find yourself in conflict with some people because they look at it as a judgment of them.
Right.
Even though I'm not talking about them, they're like, "Who do you think you are?" Right? It's like it always makes me a little sad when I count
I understand that perfectly because I also consider myself a very old soul. I remember I was sitting outside of the Damanhur, which is like kind of one of our big areas here, and somebody was hanging out with a group of friends and we were talking, and somebody came and gave me a little piece of paper, and they were like saying something about how we were like the gang of Damanhur in a joking way, but also the fact of like a recognition of you are a Polaris soul, like the idea of being a very, very, very old soul. And that doesn't mean better. It, like you said, it just means I've had all these pieces that I've had to pick up in each life. And that also means I'm probably made, like you said, a heck of a lot of mistakes
Yeah.
along the way. And it's funny because just today I was explaining to somebody that my own philosophy and my work is evolving to really be the bridge that helps connect your soul's journey to your present incarnation. In other words, to help us really connect in. And this is where the plants help me a lot to think about that ecosystem and everything that is within the ecosystem at a physical and subtle level, and
Right.
how much of that comes from what the soul has put into different aspects of our subtle body, like saying, hey, I want you to actually have access to all this. Like How do I give you access in some ways? And I feel like plants do this so well, because in their renewal of every cycle, they are constantly like rewriting their genes, reactivating pieces. It's the whole epigenetic model that helps us understand that there's so many aspects of us, and we just have to figure out the right combination to turn on for that particular moment that I'm in right now.
Right.
And I think that that's where, living many, many lives gives you the opportunity to say, I've screwed up a bunch of them. I've turned them off in the wrong ways.
Yeah.
And I'm just still learning how to do that.
Yeah.
I really enjoy that. How does that affect? I mean, you wrote this book,
Yeah.
right? What is it? The echo and the voice.
Yeah.
And how do you put, like, first of all, tell us the genesis of the book itself, but also how does all this fit into what you write?
Yeah. My that's a great question. I really appreciate being asked it, because many people won't read the book because it
Mm,
doesn't fall into the genre that they typically might gravitate to for other reasons like distraction or entertainment. Because this is not that kind of book at all. Um, so I've always thought as an artist that so many young idealist creatives among my world, and I love the young ones especially because I remember being 15, 18 and thinking I'm going to change the world with a song.
mm.
With a song. I believed it, right? And what I discovered along the way is that I wasn't wrong about imagination being a tool that is capable of changing the world. Because after all, civilization was imagined by human beings, right? They had to imagine it before they could craft all the systems and structures within it. So, what I realized as I got older is that it wasn't about one song. It's about a body of work that never strays from the message that I've always been about, which is that we're not limited to what culture, family, friends, our educational system, our governments, our neighbors, whatever, tell us to be and expect us to be. There are other choices. And one of the points I like to make is there's 8.5 billion of us on the planet. And we no longer all have to pull on the same rope in the same direction because the earth is now completely divided up, right? And but yet the systems that we're still living by try to get us all to pull in productive. You got to be a productive member of society. And, oh my God. So that is the unifying thread, not only in the book, but in all the music. I've written 100 songs and released 60 of
Wow.
them. Yeah. And yes, of course, there's an occasional fun little jaunt into Party Town in the mind of Mark, right? Because somebody asked for that. So yeah, I could do that. I could use my craft skills to write something that I'm not all that proud of. But for the most part, the artist in me always stayed on that common thread of how can I contribute to the possibility of the world being better in some way.
You touched on something that I really want to get into, if
Cool.
you'll permit me to follow down this little rabbit hole for a second, which is imagination as a tool.
Mm,
And I'm gonna preface it by my side of where, like, I'm coming from, and then I really want to hear where you're coming from. So
cool.
this year for me in particular, so a few years back, I started working with the plant that, for those of you that are watching, can see in the background. I call No Name Dracaena, and No Name Dracaena is a plant that I started to work with in one of my spiritual research groups here at Damanhur, where I decided I wanted to work on my subtle body of imagination. In other words, my soul kept telling me that there is a lot more to my imagination and I couldn't access it. Hi, Kitty. And and so I couldn't. I felt like there was so much there. I felt like it was such a part of me. I don't I know many people don't believe this, but I don't consider myself, I didn't up until then consider myself an imaginative person. I am
Mm,
very good. I'm a great derivative person, and I don't take that as an insult. I am somebody who can take, I always used to say that I'm really great at making the dreams of others come true. In other words, I can take, like, I'm a great editor, not a great writer. Like, these are all the ways that up until a certain period of my life, I felt very comfortable in. And then I got to the place where I started to shift, probably because of age, because of, different shifts in my astrology or different past, phases of life. I started to move more to the creator rather than the person that took somebody else's work and then moved it. Even as a musician, I'm
Interesting.
not an original, like, I don't compose original music. I can read sheet music and I can do that really well. And I can, whether I'm playing or whether I'm singing, but I'm not necessarily somebody who makes up songs. Never been insulted, never felt like I was less than because of it. It's just what I'm really, really, really great at is taking that idea and making something great out of it. And then I started getting this nagging inside of me that said, no, 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 there's actually more. You're looking at imagination based on these things around you because you're a very creative person. You're inside of the creative world, the arts and everything. But that's not the kind of imagination that's yours. But I had no freaking clue what it meant. So I started working
Mm.
with this plant to tap into my aura, into the layers of my aura, and find that subtle body of imagination and to start figuring out what that looked like for me. And it has very much revolutionized my life, so much so that this year I consider this to be, like, most people use the numbers. I use paths on the tree of life from Kabbalah because I'm a Kabbalist. I'm on the path of Zadi this year, the whole transfigured feminine, but imagination is another piece of that. And I was like, so I've
Mhm.
been working a lot with imagination this year. That's my premise, so you know where I'm coming from. But I love that you talked and you said imagination as a tool. And I think I'd love to hear what your thoughts on that are, because I feel like some people would hear that sentence and feel that it's contradictory, right?
Mhm.
The idea of imagination is supposed to be this spontaneous thing, this thing that just you can't control, where that is one form of imagination. But I also find that imagination is something you harness and you work with and you learn how to master in different aspects. And I'd love to hear how you work with imagination in that way, and how has, the natural world helped you explore that topic?
Right. Oh, this is. I'm really glad that you latched onto this because this. You're right. This is super rich, and it leans into what I always say: is there isn't one answer to anything.
Mm-mm.
In fact, the more you stay open to not being behind the veil, you stay open to the infinite choices beyond what your family and friends and culture and church and education tell you to do.
Right.
The more answers to every question there are. So it comes down to which one do I choose? And the answer to that, I think for everyone should be which one feels the best while simultaneously not harming anyone or anything else.
Mm.
So to get to the imagination as a tool within that frame is human being, we're a species, right? Just like the flowers and the plants that you live with and you grow with and through. Humans are a species, and what makes us unique is our brains are such that imagination is a thing that we're all capable of. The question is, how do you want to wield that gift? Because there isn't one way. There's many, many ways. And I've always saw it as a way to change my mind, even if for a moment, so I could think of a different outcome of something that I was trying to create. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. I hadn't thought of it that way.
One of the things that I've created, and we'll talk about a little later in the Creative Humanity Alliance, is a guide for the solo creator to invite them into an imaginary space long enough to create something that belongs in our collection.
Hmm.
Everything in the collection has to do with human connection.
Mm.
Nothing else is in that library. All it is, the library full of creative artifacts that represent human connection in some way, shape, or form. So I'm staying with this thread, even though it probably seems I'm getting off on a tangent.
No, 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 no. I'm following you.
Imagination as a tool is the tool has three natural laws that I build a framework out of, and I don't call it anything because that's just another thing to get in conflict about. And the first one is all one thing, AOT. And I invite the solo creator, you might be a songwriter, a painter, a sculptor, just for a moment, I want you to Be the artist that is deciding to imagine, whether you believe it or not, that everything is connected. There is no disconnection from anything or anyone. Everything is connected. Now ask whatever question you were asking in the creation of what you're working on. What's the difference now? How do you perceive that thing you were trying to bring to life through your art? How is it now different that you've just decided to creatively switch your frame and say, it's all one thing, everything is connected? And the answer always comes, there's always an answer. It's different in some way. And that's where the learning is about how and why you would use imagination as a tool. It's just an exercise of, what if this were true? What if this were true? And how does it change where I thought I was going or where I want to go with this thing?
That you're touching on so many aspects that I absolutely love, because this is, that difficulty that we as humans have of focusing on like how this doesn't fit.
Right.
And especially for, my audience, those of you who are listening are most likely multi-passionate people, multi-potentialites, people with lots of thoughts and ideas. And there is still, which it frustrates the heck out of me, this thought process that it's disconnected, right? The fact I was just talking with somebody over the weekend as we were doing this super long hike here in the mountains, which was beautiful. And we were having a discussion. He was telling me how, he spent 10 years in real estate, and how he spent another 10 years working, as a Buddhist. And then he now is really into woodworking, and he's trying to understand woodworking. And then he also, manages this other project over here. And then he says to me, he goes, and then, of course, crazy me decided to not just learn one new instrument, but two. And he's talking to me like if these things are disparate, and he's trying to like find his footing in one of them. And I'm like, you do realize they're all connected. And he looks at me, he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, there's a thread that follows through all of these, and each one of them is giving you skills that's helping you with the other. And that if you're trying to now learn an instrument, it's because those instruments contain the tools that you need, something that you need that's going to help you create better woodworking, which is
Right.
the area that you feel like you really want to develop yourself in. Like,
Right.
these aren't separate projects. And he was just like looking at me, and I was just like you said, just imagine for a second if it were true. Like,
Mm-hmm.
forget it for, why focus on the separation that just makes you feel bad about yourself, that you're wasting time, you don't know how to emphasize, like all of those things disempower you.
Right.
Ask yourself the question. We're here, we're in this beautiful natural setting. Look around, like, talk about disparate, like every freaking tree, grass, every being that we're seeing around here seems to be doing a million different things at once. And yet look how it all comes together in harmony. So just
Yeah.
like you said, what if it were true? What if it's true that all of these things are actually connected? What would that
Right.
look like then?
And what I've experienced as the real benefit of imagination and that kind of question as an exercise of creativity is that it's non-threatening.
Hmm.
Right? Especially when you're working in a group. If you're trying to put a cohort together, there it's even cross-generational, which is ideal for what I'm trying to do. You get a 20-year-old, a 40-year-old, a 60-year-old, and an 80-year-old. They all have different experiences, and you're herding them into one project so you can benefit from all those points of view. You then invite them into that space. You don't have to believe this. It's just part of what we're doing in this room right now to
Right.
get to a shared end result. So it's non-threatening to say, just for this next X number of X, this is true. How does it change what we're doing? How does it change the way you look at it? And it's easier in a group because when someone starts to get emotional, you realize they've stepped out of the exercise. They're now they're now looking through their own lens again, and it's fun to say, "Oops,
Right.
you left us for a moment. Come on back," and just invite them playfully back into. Remember, everything's connected,
Right.
and you don't have to take it with you when you go. You don't have to believe it, but just for now, right now, let's play with this.
I love it. Okay, so that's number one. What's number two?
Yep. What do you mean, number two?
Did you say there was three? Or is that all
Oh,
of
the
the
law.
seven?
Oh, yes, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah. Oh, well, I didn't think we were going to go into the other two because they
You don't
didn't.
have to. It
I
was
will
just a
mention what they
question.
are.
Okay.
The second one is just a reframing of what I learned long ago. First time I saw it was at the age of 12 in a Wayne Dyer book. And it's the formula that whatever a human being believes feeds what they think.
Yeah.
What you think, you will eventually say, right? What you say, you will do. Then that the doing is the first time that the belief is manifesting physically in your life and your world, and the outcome is the result of that. So BTSD equals O. That's the second formula, and what
Nice.
that represents is movement,
Mm,
right? Movement, because you can change the belief and the outcome change. You can change the thought, just look at all variables and then go backwards from that. And the whole formula shifts when
right.
you play with the variables in that formula. And what I loved about what I learned from Wayne at 12 was, again, he taught me that I don't have to necessarily believe in this. But if I play with it in my mind, the human brain has an interesting thing. Imagined experience stores memories exactly the same as real experience.
Yes.
So by playing with it as an artist, I begin to, without even realizing it, see the effect of that tool in my real life when I'm not an artist. That's number two. The last one is about, it's a growth mechanism. I call it elemental. And it's an acronym, and only two of the letters change, but they're still the same letter. So every little event makes every next time a little fill in the blank. And
Huh.
the event time relationship relative to growth is chaos. You're not in control. You're not making a
Right.
choice. You're acknowledging the event, and you're watching it through time, and you're then saying what happened. What was the result of that? Was it more, less, up, down, bright, dark, whatever? So the same acronym, every little effort. I just traded passive for active,
Right.
makes every next try the iteration of effort, trying again.
Huh.
A
Interesting.
little more, less, brighter, darker, funner, not funner, right? So again, it's just this thing that you do in your mind that gives you a growth potential in a character, in a storyline, whatever the case may be. I talk about all of this relative to the harmless world of creating things, not getting into the scary world of changing my beliefs or trying to change somebody else's mind about something. I use it as a tool to
Hmm.
change, what is that third verse going to be? How can I change that third verse to be in alignment with the goal that I decided on when I started writing the song?
Powerful.
I love
Very
the way
powerful.
I see your brain
I know
turning.
it's
It's,
it's processing, and like I know I can't hide anything on my face. It's like it's processing in real time, and it's really interesting. And I'm thinking that, it's when you said the second one, you made me think of a quote from Gandhi that I've always loved,
mm,
which is and it's, I'll try to quote it as close as possible, but is happiness is when what you think and what you feel and what you say are in no, when you what you think, what you think, what you say, and what you do are in harmony. And I think that this goes perfectly to that second one, because especially we don't realize that the disharmony is not whatever it is that we're thinking. It's that oftentimes our actions don't mirror what we truly feel and think. And
yeah,
therefore when those things are out of harmony with one another, then that's where the unhappiness comes. So we tend to try to like demonize our thoughts, but it's really not a problem of our thoughts or our feelings or our the things that we say. It's the fact that all of these need to be in harmony, working with one another in order for them to truly express who we are and what we do. And
absolutely.
from
Yeah.
and for me, that's really kind of the core of this whole ecosystem thinking, right? The whole way that I look at the ecosystem. If I'm trying to be with others and trying to get things done with others, and yet I don't want to be there, like it's going to come across, it's going to be a problem. Or if I don't trust the other, or if I don't believe that the other is good enough, or whatever it is, any kind of judgment that's coming out, it's going to come
Right.
out eventually. So you might as well
Right.
just deal with it. Just deal
Right.
with it in some way, whether that's dealing with it by changing myself, or dealing with it by another's. And that's why that human connection part that you
Yeah.
were talking about was so interesting. So you've mentioned it a few times, but I'd love for you to explain a little bit more. What is this Creative Humanity Alliance that you have?
Yes. Um, it's an extension of the 15-year-old me saying, I'm going to change the world with a song. Like we've already said, everything is a thread with me, and came into this life not willing to let go of the original thread. And the Creative Humanity Alliance is my latest effort, right, toward giving other interested creatives, and creative many, many things. You can make video games, you can write books, you can paint. Creative is not limited to commercial art, right? To get together, and many of them have been curious because I'm so prolific. How do you do that? You're not 20 anymore, you're in your 60s. How are you so prolific? And they're interested in how I can do that. So the Creative Humanity Alliance was a desire to share the method so that more people could get on board long enough to create another piece for the archive, right?
Mhm.
Because the only way you can make an archive about one thing is for everyone to share an understanding of what that one thing is on some level.
Right.
Like, there's a lot of levels to connection and humanity, a connection to plants, to animals, to, the cosmos. There's so many levels. So the Creative Humanity Alliance was 63 years of thinking about how do I change the world with a song?
Hmm.
And the novel demonstrated how a character, Jonas Wilder in the novel, can fulfill his dream and his goal of somehow contributing to changing the world for the better. And it wasn't a song, but in the book, it's a collection of 10 songs. But the 10 songs are very specific, and they're in a very specific order. And when you listen to it in order by Jonas's design, little things begin to wake up in the perception of the listener's position among all that you can be positioned among, right? You look at your own life, and these songs unlock code that's in the human brain. And it was Jonas's grand experiment in his living outside of society. He was living in a van, not keeping a home, just gave up all the trappings of society. Safety and security wasn't in a job and a building and a car. Safety and security for Jonas was never stopping expressing himself,
Mm.
and never stopping being open to what he experiences among and with other human beings change the way he expresses himself. And there's a moment, without giving it away, in chapter 3, part 3 rather, there's 26 chapters, where he realizes he's gotten everything that he needed from the journey on the road, which was a long one. Now it's time to take the he who he is now in close relationship with other human beings to form that alliance.
Mm.
And he and four other characters imagine the Creative Humanity Alliance in the final chapter of the book. So the fiction turned into real life in August of this year.
Wow, I mean, there's ooh, okay, hold on, wait. I wanted to figure out which direction I want to take, because I had a question that I was going to ask you, but then you actually answered it in the way that you put it all together. And I guess one of the things I want to bring into this, and coming back to, if you looked at, these pieces as ecosystem pieces, right? So going back a little bit, because I know that you think in ecosystems too. So I'm kind of
Yeah.
bringing that metaphor narrative back into it. And when I hear this type of story, and I think of kind of succession of an ecosystem, right? You have from the early succession all the way through to a mature sort of forest. Let's take a forest because it's the easiest one for us to visualize. And so, of course, the road is that middle phase where I go from early secession into kind of middle stabilizing type of ground. And then I get to the place of late succession, which is I take everything that I now created and it's rooted and it's grounded and it's a part of me. And I can just like stabilize all of that and be and enjoy what that is. And of course, there's little transformations that are happening around. How do you see the idea of like what is the ecosystem that is being created? What is the ethos of that ecosystem that you feel is most important for readers of the book, or to really walk away with?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's and my partner Howard talks about this all the time with me. He asks the same question in a lot of different ways. And what he points out is that you're creating an ecosystem that is a growing body of reminders of what it means to be a human being
Mm,
and to not see each other as the labels that our lives put on us: political, education levels, religious, ethnic, geographic, so many labels. And we look around us and people are not even taking a moment to know this other person. All they see is how their labels don't match their own.
right.
And Howard marvels because he doesn't know how to do it himself. He marvels at that not only do I create that content, I've created the content to help people understand how to create the content.
Mm,
Because the ecosystem is meant to become bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger through the alliance until anyone who looks at it can't miss the underlying message, even if it's the first whisper they've ever heard, that nothing matters more than perceiving ourselves as friend,
mm,
not enemy. To see what we have in common, what makes us beautiful and perfect. And that's compromised when we see each other as something other that is artificial, right? So we're creating an ecosystem where you can't help but notice, right? We have 10 things in the pantry now. We call it the pantry. Imagine those 10 being magnified to 100
mhm.
and then 1,000 and then 10,000. We have a big planet. And Google sees the wisdom of what we're doing. They've given us $10,000 a month to spend to get the word out about this.
Wow.
And that's a big commitment. That's
That
$120,000
is.
a year, but no
That's
strings attached.
amazing.
Yes.
That gives hope to everybody who's listening. Your projects too can be supported.
Yes. If you have the determination to really focus your mission and describe it and punch holes in it yourself before anyone else has an opportunity to.
Right.
And then when it's ready, put it in front of where some people perceive Google as an evil, right? You can see the light in the dark in anything,
And anything and everything.
in everything.
Everything. So,
So I see the light in Google because they see the light in this project.
mhm.
And so did that answer your question about the
Yeah,
importance of
it
the
is.
ecosystem? Yeah.
It is, and especially because you brought it back to, something that I keep touching on over and over again in every aspect of my own work and the work that I do with my clients, which is really nothing matters more than those relationships. Nothing
Yeah.
matters more than relationship. It
Yeah.
is relationship in all of its vast definitions: relationship with self, relationship with divine, relationship with other, relationship with more than human, relationship all around. And it is really the quality of those relationships that determines the quality of your life, right? Those relationships can have many different, I struggle with the words positive or negative anymore. I think of constructive, destructive, and even that can be useful. Positive,
Yeah.
destructive can be really positive if you use it in the right moment. And it's really
Learn
about
from
that
it.
quality of that relationship. And the fact that our going back to, what you were talking about with our cultures and all the labels that we're given, relationships in particular have so many labels attached to them that makes them myopic in nature. In some ways they're very, very, very limited. When we have this expansive way of being, I've realized that over the last years working closely with the plants, my capacity to have multi-layered relationships, my capacity, even for lack of a better term, to love, in a much more expansive way is something that I never expected to come about from working with plants so closely, but
Yeah.
has been something as a matter of fact, the day that I had which was again part of a spiritual research group that I was in, when we had this moment where we all realized that in our own ways of working with plants so closely, when we were doing the kind of end of year summary of the research that we had been doing and how it all connected between the different kind of like spokes of a wheel. We were looking at how all of our individual relation, because each one of us had a relationship for a year with a plant. Mine was with this one over here, no name Dracaena, talking about imagination, but another person was working with an avocado, another with a ficus, another one was talking with a begonia. Like we were having another with a spider plant. We were having these really interesting relations, and we would get together every week and we would share the research we were doing and how we were carrying it out and everything. And when we came to the sum of it all, it was so corny. I was just sitting there when we realized it because none of us were trying to get there. Like it wasn't we're trying to prove this, but we all ended up in like this extremely expansive love, this
Yeah.
extremely expansive understanding of the connections that we had and how it profoundly shifted the definition of the word, especially for me, where, you have love of family and I love, work. And in English, especially, we overuse the word love sometimes. Like, I really love that concept. I
Yeah.
really love that person and all this. We have a very, it's funny, we use the word a lot, but with very limited definitions of it. It,
It's
it
usually a
replaces
noun,
like
not a
in a lot
verb.
of aspects and all these different pieces.
Yeah.
And there instead, I reached this like like love that I still can't put words to because our English language doesn't have it. And now when I think of certain people, certain plants, certain experiences in my life, I get like an overrush of emotion that makes me realize that that is my divine nature to a certain extent. And it's this
Yeah.
it's mixes respect, and it doesn't mean I always like everything. Like I don't like every person that I deeply love, but there's like this respect and this reciprocity and this like humanness with otherness, and it's so hard to put into words. And I feel like that also is going back to the whole concept we were talking about imagination as a tool. I think that when we allow ourselves to be in that space, the freedom that comes with that space, because it means that all my emotions now are okay. Everything is, I'm allowed to touch it. Then I can use imagination to envision it in apply it across so many different things. It's almost like I can use that to wash and to guide this flow, because now I'm no longer acting out of fear, which is usually what inhibits us and what really blocks our imagination and so many other things. Now I'm operating from an entirely different direction. I don't know if that made any sense.
No, it did. I love it. For me, you're expressing the difference between the overly used American love is a noun.
Right.
They're almost always talking about a noun, and you're talking about love as a verb in
Mm,
its many, many aspects. You can conjugate a verb in a lot of different ways.
yeah,
And I am totally with you on that. Did you ever read the book Islandia by
I
Austin
didn't.
Tappan Wright?
No, I haven't. I'm
You
writing it
should look it
down.
up if you can find a copy, which it's out of print. If it's $100, it's worth every penny. He creates a whole world in his imagination, and he never wanted anyone to read it or never planned to. And his sister found it in the attic after he died. And there was literally tens of thousands of pages, and the book was only about 10% of what he written. But in the book, much like the early Latin language or the Romans and the Greeks, love had three different aspects: ania, apia, and alia.
Hmm.
So it was much richer understanding of the, brother sisterly love, passionate love, and then all consuming forward to history, the past, the future, the past, everything rolled up into one. That is the ultimate love. And that, in my opinion, is kind of what you're talking about.
Yeah. And it's such a shame that we've lost that.
Yeah.
It's
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 not
one of
gone.
it's not gone. You're absolutely right. And I feel like maybe it's like I said, when we got there, I was sitting there. I almost didn't want to get there. I didn't want to get there because I didn't want
Mhm.
it to think, because we always say, all you need is love, and
All
you have
you
the
need is
Beatles and you have
love.
everybody exactly. And everybody's just like talks about love and like kumbaya, and that's the answer to the world and everything. And I was like, nah, it can't be that way. That's just so corny and whatever. The answer is that. And like I said, if you look at an ecosystem, is it a battle? To a certain extent, yes, there are battles going on, but even those come from a place of love in that expansive way, because it comes from a belief that the overall ecosystem, right, has these checks and balances and movement and moments of stability and all these different things that are happening. And that is the expression of love, is the every single one of those beings being true to self and expressing themselves. And sometimes they crash into one another for a little bit, and then they deal with that and then eventually move on, because they don't permanently stay at war, which is something we unfortunately as humans do. And it's like, and then there's this ability to just to live that curiosity,
Yeah,
because when I'm not living out of fear, I can now live in that curiosity. I can live outside of those boundaries. I can live outside of my need to express only what I think somebody else wants to have.
yeah,
It changes the narrative. Going back to your first one, right? All one thing, right? Imagine everything connected. I believe that when you are in that place, as corny as it might sound, when you
mhm,
are in that place, it is so much easier to not just imagine that everything is connected. I think that that's the end goal where you end up, which is, oh my God, the realization everything is connected.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. The realization that everything is, and the best way to get there for any individual human is to play with it and practice in your mind where it's non-threatening
Right,
and get experience with it. Because, as they say, experience leads to confidence. Confidence leads to more experience and then finally mastery. And that
right.
is the key. If we want to get there, we have to play with it a little bit in non-threatening ways.
Yeah, and I love that for you, all of this started with a tiny little tulip.
I still love the tulips.
I know.
You mentioned the bulbs earlier. Can I talk about bulbs?
Yeah, please.
I didn't know about the bulbs when I was a little kid. All I knew is that if I sat there long enough, my tulips would show up again and again and again and again. I didn't know about the bulb until I got to Florida after 1969. We moved when I was 7. And that meant leaving my tulips behind because tulips don't naturally occur in Florida. You buy the bulb
Right,
and you plant it and you nurture it and you got your tulips.
right.
And so, but then it's like, oh, this is a whole other level of awareness of my friend, the bulb, right? Because I'm looking at the bulb and I'm going, there's a tulip in there, right?
Exactly.
And I'm still young enough to not have the scientific understanding of it. And that's fine because I much prefer the non scientific understanding. I
Right.
like the wonder of there's a tulip. I wonder what color it is. Is this going
Mhm.
to be a red one? Is this going to be one of those orange ones with the stripes that looks like the sun? What's this one going to be? And I even tried to figure out by looking at the bulbs, could I predict what this one is? And I never could.
No, no. But that's that wonder, right? That understanding that there's so much life inside of this thing, and I think it's a great also understanding there's so much life inside something that looks to a certain extent dead,
Yeah,
looks like, and how also, the importance of giving yourself that space and that time for hibernation, especially in the creative world. Like, you
yeah,
cannot create 24/7, nor should you. You need that time of reflection and all those. There's like so much there immersed
yeah,
inside of that bulb. There's nourishment, there is taking care of the next generation, there is ability to expand, and all of what may come, like anticipation. There's so many emotions inside of a bulb
yeah,
that you get to enjoy both the beauty of the expression of that tulip, and also what is in that potential, you might say.
yeah.
I love it. I love it. I never thought of tulips in Florida, though. I have to admit, as a Florida girl, like tulips, no, like that just
Well,
feels as if
as
they
they
would burn up.
I hate to use that phrase. They say, "Who the hell are they?" Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, you never forget your first love, and
Exactly.
right because tulips were my first love. I never. That's when I was in Florida, and in fact, in the book, Jonas has a moment in a coffee house in 1969. He's the character in the book. There's a girl on stage, 12, 13 years old, and she's reading Tulips by Sylvia Plath. Do you
Mm.
know the poem?
Yes,
It's
I do.
it's dark, it's sad.
It's, well,
And
laugh.
yeah, well, she had every reason to be together.
Exactly.
So here I am. Jonas, this is one of the autobiographical moments from the book, is that she's reading this poem, and I know she's talking about tulips, but I don't understand the sadness. I do not understand at 7 what this poem is about because that's not the tulips I know. And for her, it was something else entirely. But that's when I misspoke earlier. I wrote those first 4 lines when I was 7, not when I was 4. I loved the tulip at 4, stayed with me until 7, and I wrote those 4 lines.
Right.
And that was a big deal for me because that was the first time I realized that there's a difference between every human being's perception of anything, including themselves, and what another person could perceive of you and the thing that you're perceiving, right?
Right.
There's maybe no resemblance at all. And if you compare notes in a thoughtful way, there's learning there. But to go back to the misuse of love, if you throw the word out and everybody makes an assumption what you mean, no one's learned anything about what you think or feel about love. That's why I like just thought. I love that you brought up that we're lazily using the root word of humanity's connection to one another.
Hmm.
To get back to the kumbaya moment. All we
Yeah.
need is love.
Yeah. Oh, I'm telling you, I struggled for a while because I kept trying to avoid it. We were having that conversation and I was like, no, it can't be. And then I
I can't
finally had
do
to
this.
call it out. I was like, oh my goodness, folks, are you realizing that all of us have just gotten to unconditional love? And
Yeah,
everybody was like, "Oh my goodness, yes, that's
yeah,
what I'm feeling." We had been all trying to put different words into it and different ways, like somebody through
yeah.
music. Mine, this plant doesn't talk to me. I have to dance. So it's about movement.
All right.
So for mine, it was movement. For one person, it was music. For another person, it was speaking. For another person, it was care in the forest. For another person, it was art. Each
Mm.
one of us had come at it from different angles. And we were like, we're at unconditional love, folks. And they were all like, oh my goodness, yes, yes,
But
yes.
what a fun way to get to
It
being
was
at that.
wonderful. It was.
Right? You
It
could,
was,
you could go through years of talk therapy. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It just doesn't work for me. I'd much rather do what you did.
yeah,
Have a
absolutely.
relationship with, yeah.
And that was, I think, was another confirmation for me of this work that I do with plants, where every
Yeah.
one of us was working very closely with one particular plant person. We had chosen that person had chosen us. We were all approaching it in different ways based on our own experiences and how important it is that, especially when it comes to this topic of love, I learned, at least in this, which was, oh my God, yeah, sure, okay, I can intellectualize it, but you have to touch other senses. You have to go through other ways to really get into it. Because when you just only approach it, going back to imagination, because our imagination is limited, especially in the world of love, by the
Yeah.
words themselves, when you approach it from that intellectual way, you mostly get derivatives, which are not always bad because depending on what you're trying to express, but you get derivatives of the love that we already kind of know, as opposed to approaching this where each one of us was working on different aspects of ourselves
Yeah.
with these plant partners. We were able to get to a completely different understanding that was a embodied understanding of love, that unconditional love that each one of us had to even express. Like somebody had to have us listen to the music, that they created together, and they were like, this is my expression. And another person wrote a poem. Like almost none of us it could put it into simple words. We had to express it and then
Yeah.
group it together to find there. So it was wonderful. Mark, this has been such a delightful conversation.
Yes,
As we wrap
indeed.
things up, a few two kind of last pieces. One, what are what do you want everybody, anybody who's listening to this, for you, what would be like if you walk away with one thing of everything we said? Here's the piece that I really want you to walk away with.
Yeah. That we're all capable using our imagination to be a part of a movement to reconnect to each other.
Mm,
We all have that built in already. It's already a skill. You just got to practice it. It's already an ability, not a skill. It's an ability. Yeah. Yeah.
beautiful.
Be a part of
That's
it.
yay.
And
And
set
then
down your screens. Stop being influenced by screens.
yeah.
Except to watch this podcast.
Exactly. Just listen to the podcast, then go outside. Do something else afterwards. It's totally understandable. I find that I have this really skewed way of looking at things, because when people talk about, like using technology too much, I've been working with technology since 1997. So I've spent a lot of time in
Yeah.
technology. But at the same time, I live in community. I spend a frick load of a lot of time with other people
There's a
in
balance there.
connections. Exactly. And that's the part that I think we might be the better key. I sometimes wonder if it's not so much like put down your screen, but more like
I
how are
know.
you, yeah, where are you like where are you
Yeah.
connected in other ways as well?
Yeah.
Do you have connections? Like I went, like I said, on this beautiful hike to the Val Malone on Sunday, and it was gorgeous. I spent what was it, from like 9 a.m. to pretty much like 2 p.m. with a group of people in nature, with moments of silence and moments of talking. And, you have that. And we do all these other things that we do as groups and in connection and in community. And I have a lot of community connections online. I'm not just scrolling alone. And so I think,
Yeah.
going back to what, your Creative Humanity Alliance, it's all about human connection, and how it doesn't matter the medium. The question is not, are you scrolling? Are you online or not online? Are you on a technology medium or not? It's, are you making genuine connections?
Yeah.
If you're just
Scrolling towards
consuming,
something rather than away from something.
exactly, that's my phrase. I love that. I'm always like, you have to be moving towards something, not running away from it. That's what the plants
Yes.
have taught me. And the
Yes.
second thing is, how do people get in touch with you? Where do they find you?
Yeah. I normally say markfirehammer.com, but in this case and in this conversation, the best place to go is creativehumanityalliance.org,
And I will,
because
of
you can
course,
get to everything from there.
perfect.
But the takeaway that I want people to make is go there, look at it, not necessarily for your own, yeah, I want to become a maker and I want to contribute to the alliance. Who do I know that is looking for this?
Hmm.
Because it's a reorientation of the role of artists away from commercial, make for the market, and instead make for humanity. And with commitments from companies like Google, we can put the word out about everything that we create as an alliance at their expense, right? And that's what I want people to understand is whoever that's frustrated because their paintings, their stories, their books, their art, just there's no opportunity for them. I want them to keep doing what they're doing, but I also want them to join the alliance, and let's magnify our abilities by all focusing on one thing for a few minutes of our talented days. You don't have to dedicate your life to it, but if everybody
Right.
puts in 10 minutes or an hour or two or whatever, we can create something that's already become quite compelling. It's only going to expand from there. So creativehumanityalliance.org.
Perfect. I will make sure that I include that into the show notes. I'll also, of course, put a link to your book, because, people need to be able to find that quickly. We
Thank
want
you.
to make it
Yes,
as
I
easy
appreciate it.
as possible. And
And if
I will
anybody
make
reads it and doesn't like it, I will buy it back.
That's wonderful.
Right?
So
Because
look,
I like giving them away.
guaranteed, guaranteed,
There's no
absolutely
risk.
guaranteed. No
But
risk.
wait, that's not all.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Mark. This has been such a delightful conversation. I'm just, I'm thrilled. This is orienting the rest of my day. I already had a good morning. I had a meeting that went way better than I thought it was going to go. And now this, and I'm like, oh, and the sun just came out after pouring rain and gloom all day yesterday.
Oh, beautiful.
That's it. I'm happy. I'm just going to tip my hat there. I'm like, okay, this is it. This is the best.
Well, you're welcome, and thank you for having me and doing the work that you do, Tegrilla. Yeah.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much. All right. So, as you move through the rest of your day, I would love for you to notice where imagination wants to reconnect what's been divided inside you, around you, within the ecosystems that you touch. If today's conversation stirred something, a curiosity to listen deeper, to reconnect to parts of yourself, to remember the subtle ways you already belong, you'll love the practical tools to connect to your intuition in my recent workshop, Awaken Dormant Aura Layers with Plant Support, which is a part of the Reconnect with Plantkin series. In it, we worked directly with plant allies to sense and strengthen the subtle layers and reconnect to abilities your soul has mastered. So, imagination isn't just a thought, it becomes an embodied practice. You can access the replay of that workshop along with all of the past and future sessions, because this is a workshop and a workshop series that I do every month when you join Blooming Sprouts in the Naturally Conscious community. All the details, as always, are in the description. So come tend the layers of your own energy and let's see what's ready to bloom, right? And as always, remember to resist the urge to hold back your emerging green brilliance. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Reconnect with Plant Wisdom. To continue these conversations, join us in the Naturally Conscious community, your premier online ecosystem for plant reawakening and accelerated evolution and co-creation with other kin. Here, you'll find expansive discussions, interactive courses, live events, and supportive group programs like the Plant Wisdom Book Club and the Sprouts Writing and Creativity Group. Connect with like-minded individuals collaborating with plants to integrate these insights into life. Intro and outro music by Steve Shuley and Poinsettia from The Singing Life of Plants. That's it for me, Tigria Gardenia, and my plant collaborators. Until next time, remember, resist the urge to hold back your emerging green brilliance. I'm out. Bye.